Teachers of Reddit. What was the most obvious teacher crush someone had on you? Submitted by Iatemidog69. I have a student this year who tells me how pretty my hair is every single day. He's 7. I taught preschool and the owner's grandson would tell everyone we were going to get married once he was done with first grade. He even gave me mittens with hearts on them because hearts are for love. He's in middle school now and doesn't remember me. Person shrugging, medium light skin tone, female sign. I was a special needs teacher. There was zero subtlety. One student would constantly try to lift up my skirt. Teach English in China. The girls will literally say, "I have a crush on you." I had a student ask me if I was married. Yes. This was followed by, "But are you happily married?" Quote, I started teaching way too young. Edit. Appreciate the silver. My first year teaching high school, the AV department made an end-of-the-year tape for the students every year as a keepsake. That year they allowed a senior to profess her love to me on the tape. I didn't know she had done this and they had allowed it until it played over their AV system to the whole school. Needless to say, I was pissed. But I couldn't make too much of a stink because I didn't want a lot of attention drawn to it. And they weren't going to take it out. Fuckers. When I left, my computer unlocked and a student put naked pictures of herself as my wallpaper and a post-it with her number. A student who had a crush on me wrote a straightforward proposition and asked another teacher to deliver it to me. This teacher was a mentor of sorts to the student. So you'd think he'd do something wiser and more responsible than what he actually did, which was deliver the note and threaten me with some form of unspecified violence if I told anyone. So I informed the principal, and both the student and teacher were transferred to other schools. I had a kid ask me to marry him the other day. Then he proceeded to say I would be way too old for him by the time he was old enough to get married. I teach at a local university and I've had a few, including one who used to sketch me during class, one who tried to put his arm around me, etc. The most obvious and persistent was a student who used to follow me after class every day, show up at my office just to talk, and spent all of his time attempting to look down my shirt. He ended up dropping out of college halfway through the semester. Not a teacher but used to be a Cub Scout guide. One of our boys, 10 yo, had a crush on my adjutant, 16 yo girl. He swore she will be his girlfriend one day, and was strangely serious about it. We laughed it off, and forgot about it. Years went by. The boy became a man, joined the army, came back, went to medical university, got buff and handsome, and reached out to his old crush on Facebook. They got married last May, and have a baby girl. Bit of a different one this. Parents' evening. Single mom comes in to talk about her son. Her youngest daughter, probably about 4, runs in, jumps on my knee and exclaims, "My mommy says you're going to be our new daddy." Longest parents' evening of my life, faced with tears of joy. I teach at a university and students ask me out. I had a student once ask me out in front of the class while I was teaching, but I think it was more a power move than anything else. Edit. Bonus story. I teach a sexuality class and a student brought up negging. I asked the class for a definition and one dude goes, "You're pretty for a sociologist." The entire class was horrified that he had negged me. Starting teaching high school English at 21 in the early 90s. Very religious. Student wrote me an anonymous letter explaining that she believed that God had put her in my class because we were meant to be together. Figured it out by handwriting. Reported it. It was last days of the school year before she graduated, so I don't think I ever had to deal with her being in my class again because of finals or something. I'm not a teacher, but I do have a story of when I was a HS student. It was my senior year and I had a crush on this young history teacher. He would come on model-on trips with us as a chaperone so he knew who I was. It was my birthday and he heard from a different teacher across the hall. He said, "Happy birthday," to me. And my response was, "Thanks. I'm 18. I blurted it out very quickly and realized literally the second it left my mouth how inappropriate it was. His response: "Well, you can vote now." Quote, "In the days of MSN, I got a chat invite from someone who had the same last name as me. I assumed it was a relation, but they didn't say anything and so I left for a bit to eat. I came back and saw a couple more people had been added to the chat and saw they'd been talking about me. I realized they were students because they referred to me as Miss. They were teasing one of the others for his crush on me and he was defending my massive ass as hot. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in college we had a pretty sexy biology professor. Not only was he physically attractive but he seemed to be a pretty cool person. Most of the women in his classes were pretty smitten and I won't pretend like I wasn't one of them. This year, however, I went back to college after a few years off, so I was 26 in rooms of 18 to 21-year-olds. 5 years may not seem like a huge difference, but holy shit, it was. His office was connected to the lab, and one day while myself and some other students were doing work in the lab, this one girl was quite loudly proclaiming the things she would do to him, including saying things like, "I don't care if he's married with kids." He was sitting in his office at the time and I said, "You need to keep your ovaries in check. He can definitely hear you right now." She said she didn't care and she hoped it tempted him this year. It made me uncomfortable for him. I can't imagine how he must have felt. He usually came out of his office to chat with us or help us, but not that day. Not a teacher, but I had a crush on a lunch lady while I was in the first grade and I would always say, "Hey, good looking, what ya got cooking?" Quote, she knew what was up. Not me, but my best friend's husband. He's mid-20s and attractive but fairly average looking. He started teaching high school a few years ago and his female students would flirt hard. He told me a female coworker was chatting with him in the hall at one point and later his female students started badgering him to find out if they were dating. Same teacher said, "Listen, do not let any of them catch you in a room alone. They will start rumors for clout that could get you fired." Later, one started an Instagram account of pics she and her friends would take in class and about the school. A couple stalked him at the mall and finally met his then fiancé, now wife. She told me they acted kinda jealous and seemed upset. "She's fucking gorgeous." She found the obvious disappointment hilarious. He doesn't teach high school anymore and I think aggressively flirty teenage girls may be one of the reasons. Lol. My older bro's friend proposed to our 60-plus teacher every day. She always laughed about it. Cue the entire football team picking up on this and proposing to her before every game. For about 3 years. Not me, but when I was in school a teacher found another student's very graphic erotic fanfiction about him. This year ended up having a conference with her parents, counselor, and principal. Girl got transferred to a different classroom but tried to shoot up the school with what she thought was her brother's secret gun. It was a toy he modified to look real. Hadn't seen or heard about her since, but before I graduated the school made it a rule that staff were not to be depicted in any creative work, and if any such work was found the owner was looking at suspension. Working as a substitute teacher, I had a 6th grader hand in a poem that went, "Roses are red, violets are blue. I am single. How about you?" Quote. She also worked her phone number into another poem she handed in. I swear the first year I was teaching I passed 2 students in the hall and the one said, "That's the new teacher," and his friend said, "Yeah, he's so hot." I taught pre-K and one student always wanted to be around me and would pretend to slip up and call me Monsieur. He saw my phone had a screensaver of me and my at the time boyfriend and he got all Madden said I should break up with him lol. Kids are adorable. I doubt he'll remember me in a few years. The one where she kept staring at me in class and invited me to her birthday party and we had sex that night. I teach languages to adults, by the way. Back when I was teaching preschool, 3-year-olds don't do subtle. He always wanted to hold my hand when we went on walks, to sit next to me at circle time, and just to look at me with puppy eyes. It was adorable, but at the same time it was a relief when he grew out of it. Years later, I was teaching an all-boy class at a vocational high school and was lucky enough to get a bright new teacher on a Quomenius exchange to co-teach the class with me. She was also quite attractive and the boys reacted. Since it was an English language class, I got a kick out of doing my best Mary Poppins impression. Close your mouth, please. We are not a codfish. When I was in high school, I saw a handwritten letter on my English teacher's desk. While waiting to speak with her, other kids were hanging around the desk, but I think I was the only one to spot and read the letter. It was sitting among piles of paperwork, partially obscured, but not hidden, so I suspect even the teacher hadn't seen it yet. Paraphrasing, but the letter went something like this. Mrs. S. I love your curves. I can't stop thinking about you. You are my favorite teacher because you have a great smile. I want to touch you and kiss you. There was more, but I didn't pull the letter from the pile to read it, because I realized how it would look for the teacher, and I was scared other people would see it. She was my favorite teacher at the time, and I suspected this note was very much not welcome, judging from her personality. Very chill, friendly, professional teacher, and the fact that it wasn't hidden. You'd think a teacher-student relationship would be a little less obvious. I never told my friends. I never mentioned it to the teacher. I just kept quiet. I suspected she was the victim here, not the student, and I wasn't about to start any gossip about her, potentially getting her fired. A few years later, another student was kicked out of school for sexually harassing a new art teacher. It was so bad, she had anxiety attacks and sped from the room to a neighboring class to be with another teacher. An escape hemisphere. He was finally kicked out when he sent her unsolicited dick pics. He got her number without her permission, and she took it to the school board and police. I suspect it was the same kid who wrote the letter, but I have no proof. Not a teacher, but I was accused of having a teacher crush on my math taught in college. I'm okay with math, but I have to put in a lot of practice and I go to office hours. I'm very visual and I really like to just watch math problems being done. I'm also very much a soundboard learner and I talk myself through problems or talk with others through problems. My TOF figured this out and he went out of his way to help me. It also just so happened that he was the TOF for various math courses while I was in college, and I managed to get him as a TOF for all but one of my math classes during my entire undergrad. My last class 1 had with him. I wrote him an absolute stellar review because he deserved it for helping me get through calc at a linear algebra. That summer, I actually worked with him in a program where he taught math and I taught programming. I sat in on his first class and he was telling his students he got this amazing review this past year, and yep, it was my review. I called him the Chuck Norris of TAs and he quoted that line and others I used, so I know it was mine. I gasped and went, "Hey, I wrote that review." And I could see he was genuinely appreciative I spent the time to write such a review, but then the whole class went, "Ooh, someone has a crush on the teacher." I was so embarrassed. Anyways, I had those freshmen for 8 a.m. introductory programming and I made their quizzes extra hard compared to the other sections. The Ta and I would drunk grade papers with the other teachers, and man, even drunk math majors still talk about math.